Welcome back to the MMA Plug, presented to you by 98.1 FM Mile High Sports Radio. I'm your host, Jordan Kurtz. You can give me a follow along online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. This weekend, as advertised, UFC 299 is completely stacked, ladies and gentlemen. There are 14 fights on this card, so it is larger than normal already as it is. If you want to watch the action from start to finish, you will want to check out those early Fight Pass prelims, and you could start watching those as early as 4 p.m. this Saturday. But like we say, there are so many fights on this card, and from top to bottom, there are names that you are going to recognize. There is action through and through, from title fights to debutantes that were highly sought out free agents. And we're going to dive into all of that right now. At the top of the bill, you have a bantamweight title fight, which is a rematch between champion Sugar Sean O'Malley and Marlon Chito Vera. Now, the first fight did end by the drop foot, so it was, it was TKO. He kicked the leg went out. That's finished. It is what it is. Sean will not ever accept or will never give credit to that loss, as always mentioned by him saying undefeated, so on and so forth. But hey, Chito did catch him with the leg kick. But in terms of being the more complete fighter, I think that you have to give the nod to Sean, but Chito's power absolutely needs to be respected. And the thing is, too, you know that this is the UFC trying to do everything that they can to elevate Sean O'Malley. And it's not to slight or to disrespect Chito by any means, but there's no reason why you tell me that Merab fights last month against Henry Cejudo when he's been the clear-cut number one contender forever. And then you have this matchup that that Sean wanted, that is presumably an easier matchup for him than Merab against Chito. The UFC, though, also isn't stupid. They know that with Sean as a champion and Merab waiting in the wings, hey, you need to try to juice this berry for about all that you can get. Sean O'Malley has a lot of those star-esque qualities, but, you also have to wonder where the numbers also go in line, because there's been some people that have pointed out online that the numbers in terms of the viewership for the different YouTube segments and whatnot that the UFC puts out with Sean in comparison to some of the other champions, it's pretty much right hand in hand. There's not a major discrepancy there. So I think that they want to try to do everything that they possibly can. Again, and there's going to be more that we're talking about this later on in the program, but they're going to do what they are able to, because Sean does transcend some of these barriers. He does have a considerable following. What does that following and all of those partnerships with Nelk and Full Send, which we know Dana's tight with Happy Dad, with all of those other different opportunities, if you will. Sean was on the Kill Tony shows for a while with Tony Hinchcliffe, so he's in the comedy world. He's all over the place. But does that translate into revenue? And I guess that's, if it does, then that's why the UFC will continue to try to foster that partnership with him, if you will. And you know that Dana kind of has a hard-on already for Merab because of the whole situation with Aljo. It's pretty well documented at this point. But in terms of the X's and O's of this fight, I think that Sean has continued to just develop himself into such a tactician as a striker, and he's an undervalued grappler. I think that Cheeto's grappling also doesn't get the credit that it deserves. But I do also believe that in a lot of Cheeto's recent wins, he kind of just lulled around or gave up rounds until he found the big shot and landed the knockout. So, does the grudge match element between him and Sean fuel his approach in this fight? And does he start off a little bit more aggressive? I don't know. I mean, that's high risk, high reward, right? When you have someone who's a sniper like Sean O'Malley who can counter strike or draw out some opportunities with the length that he has, that might be a very dangerous game to play if you're Marlon Chito Vera. But what do you guys think? Let me know. Hit me up on Instagram or on Threads. That's at comments from the Peanut Gallery, or let us know on the Go Fast, or excuse me, the Jocko Go hotline at 303-831-1340. The co-main event is a fight that, when it got announced, I was somewhat bewildered as to why in the hell Dustin Poirier took this fight, or why it makes sense for Dustin to take this. You have Dustin Poirier, the Diamond, the former interim champion, number 3, taking on number 12, so a considerable jump in the rankings for Benoit Saint-Denis. But the God of War, this dude is a complete juggernaut, a berserker, a destructor, if you will. And yes, I understand that he got beat up bad by Elzar dos Santos. But aside from, it was a back and forth affair until he finally just, the tank went out, and then he just got beat up from that point. But every fight aside from that, this dude is a murderer. This dude is a straight savage. He was a real deal soldier in the French military who decided to start training MMA originally to be a better soldier. And now, 6 years later, here he is on the cusp of potentially being in the top 3 of one of the most decorated divisions in all of mixed martial arts. Again, Benoit Saint-Denis is a terror, but to be fair and switch things up, he also has not fought anybody that is the caliber of Dustin Poirier. I mean, like I say, Dustin, his last fight was for literally the BMF title against Justin Gaethje. Had he won that fight, he would be waiting in the wings for a title shot. So we got to keep all things in perspective when we're talking about the fight game over here. Sometimes you run into a buzzsaw. Sometimes this game can be very, very unforgiving. If you're in a position like Dustin Poirier, sometimes you find yourself in a spot where the UFC then eventually says, you know what? We are going to put you in this now, as we mentioned before, gatekeeper role. Are you still that guy? And is this kid potentially him? That's the questions that they try to answer when you have these types of jumps in the rankings and these matchups. For Dustin, I mean, is this an opportunity more or less just for him to say, yeah, I still am him? It's such a dangerous fight to go out there and to be able to, or for that to be the case. But kudos to him for being the gamer that he is, and that's why people love Dustin Poirier. That's why he was fighting for that BMF title, because it's supposed to be an anyone, anytime type of ideology behind that, right? In the feature fight, it's a matchup between a couple of welterweights that stylistically, it's a great matchup. This wouldn't have been the first choice for me as far as Michael Venom Page making his UFC debut with Kevin Holland. I personally would have liked to have seen Wonder Boy first, but Kevin Holland is the second choice. And it's going to be a tremendous fight. You have the number 13 welterweight and Kevin Holland taking on Michael Venom Page. Michael Venom Page, after his long, tremendous run in Bellator, went on a couple of different free agency fights out there. Fought in bare knuckle against Mike Perry. Had another different opportunity out there. Goes back to Bellator and wins immediately by that leg kick that just completely destroyed his opponent's knee. That was one of the most, just I'm pretty desensitized to a lot, but seeing like the actual I think it was like just the patella potentially that shattered, whatever it was that he kicked right there on the leg, just made an immediate indentation. It was like, oh God, that is not good. That is going to take some time to heal. But that's going to be a striker's delight in that matchup. You can almost guarantee that you're not going to see anybody shoot in that fight. So if you want to see a striking matchup, go ahead and check that one out. Speaking of strikers, in the next fight, you have number 11 ranked Jack Della Maddalena. He's a very fast rising prospect in the welterweight division. He's been a guy who, once he's gotten into the UFC, he's hit the ground running, and he's put on bonus performance after bonus performance. And that's where you see then here another situation with Jack and Gilbert Burns, like you saw with Benoit Saint-Denis and Dustin Poirier. Jack being ranked number 11, Gilbert Burns being ranked number 4. Dorino has been that guy for a long time, and he's another one who is an absolute gamer who is willing to step in there with anybody at any given time and puts on entertaining performances. Obviously, you're going to have some people say, well, what about the Bilal fight? Well, yeah, but he was obviously, the shoulder got torn right away in that fight, and he fought that with one side of his body. And he did what he could to try to continue to gut it out throughout the fight. And Bilal still really didn't do anything exciting. So there you go. Opening up the main card, you have a bantamweight matchup between Song Yadong at number 7 facing off against the former bantamweight champion, number 4 ranked Petr Yan. What an interesting run and fall from grace for Petr Yan, folks. I mean, at one point, we thought that, hey, Petr Yan is absolutely the best bantamweight in the world. And especially when he was on that rise to the title, he looked damn near unstoppable. But I don't think that it's a skill issue. I think that after taking, or obviously the loss to Aljo with the disqualification by knee, losing the belt, that's a tough situation. Then losing in the rematch to Aljo down in Jacksonville, I think that dropping those couple of fights along with then losing to Sean O'Malley, I think that took a lot of wind out of the sails of Petr Yan. I think that him losing those fights in that fashion set him up to be kind of on his heels against Merab, and Merab went full God mode machine style fighter in that matchup and just highlight reeled him the entire time, just takedown after takedown after takedown. So I think that what we're not seeing, we're seeing a guy who's potentially, and maybe he's been able to address it with the time away, but a guy who was kind of lost and searching mentally. And if Petr Yan can find that again, he has some of the best boxing in all of MMA. The Siberian Gangster still has a lot left in him, but he's got a very tough test with Song Yadong because that kid is good everywhere. Song Yadong hits like a Mack truck. The kid can wrestle his ass off, and he is very solid in being able to maintain his position and dictate where he wants to be within grappling sequences. I don't think that Petr Yan would try to really grapple with him in the first place, but I do think that the right hand of Song Yadong is something to look out for when he fights against Petr Yan. Petr is going to be, or at least I think will be, the faster fighter, but Song Yadong continues to impress and continues to elevate his game as he's the younger fighter who is on the rise. he's just making improvement after improvement. And hey, that's kudos to his team, Uriah, and all the boys out there at Team Alpha Male, because that kid's a stud. On the prelims, you have Denver's very own Curtis Blades taking on Jailton Almeida. This is number 5 versus number 7 heavyweights. That's going to be a fight that you have two big boys in a big slot on a big card. Jailton Almeida is certainly a dangerous fighter, but Curtis Blades is someone who has been right on the edge of getting that undisputed title shot for so long. And I personally hope that Curtis is able to get it done in this fight and get himself back toward that top 3, then back toward a potential, just consideration of time, because who knows when the top of that division is going to move. When John comes back, is it a Stipe fight? Is it an Aspinall fight? There's so many things that are log jamming the top of the heavyweight division right now. But following that, you have fight Caitlin Chikagian with Macy Barber. Macy Barber being a Colorado girl. She's coming in the fight ranked as the number 6 against Caitlin's number 4. One thing about Macy's style is she always fights like a gangster. Sometimes it's a little bit dirty or it's a little bit messy. And in those fights, though, she still finds a way to get the win. I mean, in the tight exchanges, the way that she throws elbows and she's not afraid to get grimy and get bloody, like, hey, it's respect. She fights like a dog. So that's going to be one to look out there for. And Caitlin Chikagian, being the former title challenger, I think that she still wants to try to establish that she is one of those top tier vets, but she's got a young, hungry fighter who is ready to make a statement on it. So we'll see how that one goes. A couple of other fights to run down before we hit the break. You have another ranked matchup between a guy who I meant to mention earlier when we were talking about those quote-unquote gatekeepers who's fought literally everybody at 55 and at 70. But you have Rafael Dos Anjos, the former champion, ranked at number 11, taking on Mateusz Gamrot, the number 6 ranked fighter in the lightweight division. Mateusz Gamrot's coming into the fight at 23-2. I mean, obviously a highly thought of and coveted prospect. So if he gets by a guy like RDA, that's just another big name on his resume. But by the flip side of that same coin, if RDA is able to beat the hype train like a Mateusz Gamrot, where does that put him back in the equation toward the top of the division? You have top-ranked Pedro Munoz at number 12, a perennial ranked fighter of the bantamweight division, taking on Kyler Phillips. Kyler Phillips is a very talented prospect out of the MMA lab down there in Arizona. 11-2, Ultimate Fighter vet. This kid is, he's a stud. He's ran into a little bit of adversity at certain points throughout his career, but like I say, that's a kid who has a lot of talent, and that's a matchup that is going to be great to see there because Pedro Munoz is tough as nails, and he's one of those guys who there's a reason why he's been ranked for damn near a decade at this point, because he's just that tough and he's that grizzled of a veteran. You have a full 5-fight main card, though, ladies and gentlemen. We're not going to get through the full run of there because we just have so much more to get through on the rest of the program. But like I say, there is action all throughout the day there. Tune in starting at 4 o'clock. Fight that's circled for me on that Fight Pass prelim is Michelle Pineda taking on Michael Olachechik. Stick around after the break, folks. I'm Jordan Kurtz. Give me a follow along online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery.
Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. That helps us continue to produce this original MMA content and bring it for you every single week. Tune in to the MMA Plug on 98.1 FM, Mile High Sports Radio.